Hello everyone, welcome back to English with Lina. So in this video, I'm going to give you a review, the most recent update of the IELTS listening test. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so traditionally we are used to these kind of tests, right? So part one, we will have this like a form or perhaps a table and we fill in all of them. Part two, there is a myriad of different kind of questions. So it can be like a multiple choices question, or it can be like multiple choices, multiple answers, like two options, or it can be like this. So that is for part two. For the multiple choice questions for part two, it tends to be that it is very short and concise. And then in part three, recently, as in like the past 4 to 5 years, we have this kind of format, which is quite popular, right? So it looks like this. We will have around like 10 questions, perhaps, or even shorter, and then a different kind of exercise in part three. But for the majority of the top, it's gonna look like this. So it would have like 10 multiple choices questions. Sometimes the text is too long. It's like, I don't know, it's like a line and a half, or it's just like all the way to the other edge of the piece of paper. So it can be annoying to a certain degree, but not as the new format, which I'm gonna come into it like in a few minutes. And part four, traditionally, we have like a lecture, only one speaker giving quite an academic topic. And we're going to listen from question 31 to 40 just about this lecture. And sometimes, or actually most of the times, it'll be B2 or even sometimes C1 words in there as well. So more academic words in part four. And you don't have the time in between. So between question 35 and 36, you don't really have like 10 or 20 seconds to digest the next pieces of information. What you have, a pause of like 2 to 3 seconds, maybe to know that, or maybe to read, but I don't think you're going to have enough time. So that's the traditional format that's been quite stable for the past 4 to 5 years. However, the game has changed. If you have attended the IELTS test recently, you would have noticed it. So I think it started around May this year. It was the first time like a very strange new kind of format has appeared. And then in June, it's escalated a little bit. I took my test this month in July, and I have heard from my friends as well. All of their tests pretty much has been in this new format, which I'm going to tell you now. So part one can be varied, as in you can have one form or one table as usual, or you can have like 3 different exercises inside part one. So it can be a mix of multiple choice, fill in the blank, or choose multiple choice, multiple answers, and matching. So you have the certain items, you match with certain words down there, or other kind of questions in part one. I think 4 years ago, when I did my IELTS test, I have encountered perhaps the most bizarre design of part one ever. So at that time, I was taken aback. My part one was divided into 5 different sections, 5 different exercises altogether. So I was like, oh my God, I am not prepared for it. That what I was screaming inside my head, it was quite loud when I saw that part one format. And then perhaps at that time, I should have flipped over all the pages to see what part 2, 3, and 4 gonna look like, so that I really can be in the better test mood. But then I worried, I was petrified. Instead of doing all the things that I have just told you, I kind of stayed still, fixed like a stone to my chair, and I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen to the next part? Is it going to be this bizarre, like all different kind of exercises? I'm not mentally prepared for this new format. That was like 4 years ago, by the way. And I was like, oh, okay, I gotta do it. I gotta do it. Just focus. So at that time, I skipped two first questions of that listening test already to just bring my nerve and all mind back to the test. Really, honestly, at that time I was silly, and that's why I lost two scores. And then now back to the new format now. So what I'm trying to say is this new format has not been like really new. It's been here and there, but not very often. But now it's occurs more frequently, a lot more. And it's not just part one now. All the parts are altered slightly. So let me hear me out. So part one, my test in this month, it was as usual. It's actually a normal form that you fill in. That's so. However, I noticed two B2 words inside this part one, which normally would never appear in this part one. It tend to be for part four, like the long lecture form, yeah. But it's already like it started right in part one, even though by the look of it, at first glance, you may think, oh, this is the same part one. This may not. Another thing is that when they spell the names or they spell the postcodes or any list of numbers or words, they tend to speak much faster. It's just like all in one go, not like intentionally slowed down like before. So that are the two differences in terms of part one. Moving on to part two. Part two, my test looked normal, but perhaps I'm going to give you a few mock test examples here from British Council website for you to know that it may be different. Yeah, but my real test, it was kind of normal. I got a map, and perhaps the other one was matching. So that matching is, it had a lot of words, both inside the box and inside your answer. I think really it's supposed to be in part three rather than part two, but then part two now have that a little bit more advanced questions. And then part three was actually the most bizarre one to a certain degree. So it was divided into three different exercises once again. And the first one was multiple choice, multiple answers. That time, I had to choose three items on that list. So the list was like 8 or 9 items altogether, and you have to pick three of them. So it's a lot more intensive, and a lot of attention need to be paid onto that kind of exercise. And they will give you like 10-20 seconds, I think tense, to really read the next part of section 3. So this is the trick that I feel both in the mock test and in the real test that they have performed. Sometimes twice in the mock test, and in my real test, it was only once. So this trick, listen carefully. So it was from question 24 to 30, right? So 24 and 25 was two options. So you would choose like multiple choice and two answers from the list. As usual, the list looked absolutely normal, like 4 to 5 items. And then after that is a third exercise inside part 3. So the third exercise consists of a small paragraph. I think it had like 5 sentences, and you will need to fill in the blanks. All right. Basically, it looks absolutely normal, but then you don't tend to have a lot of fill in the blanks question in the IELTS listening test, do you? Or, I mean, at least for me, I have almost never ever encountered it, even in like other materials, not even just the real materials. So it's one of the strange questions that normally doesn't appear. Between those two exercises, you wouldn't have any time to pause or to understand that, hey, okay, we're going to move on to the next exercise. No, because it's already kind of separated right after the first exercise, between the first and the second one. So the second and the third one, you don't have any break, basically. It's gonna go straight from second exercise to the third exercise. And imagine you're inside the test room, of course, anxiety and everything gonna kicks in, right? That's just the normal thing. Basically, you was like paying attention to exercise two, and for multiple choice, multiple answers. Some of the time, or shall I say most of the time, it will be confusing. Like you may consider between, oh my God, I think it's A or B. Maybe I already put down C, but the other one, I think A or B. Still trying to capture more information without realizing that it has already turned on to exercise three. Okay. By the way, have I mentioned this? The paragraph, it's quite strange in a sense that they wouldn't use exact words that come before or after the keywords that you need to fill in. All right, they would use synonyms or a different way of saying that sentence, so it can be very confusing for listeners, for candidates to capture the right word to put right in that space for all of the blanks inside that exercise. So it can be very challenging, and this is kind of like a new exercise as well. And then we have section 4. So section 4 will look something like this. This is what I have taken from a mock test, but my real test looked more or less like this. So the first part would be like multiple choice, and I did a paper-based test. So I felt that maybe my memory does not serve me well, but from what I can recall, I think that the size of the text on that multiple choice question specifically, of the most part of my listening test, it was squeezed into like a smaller font, much smaller size. Perhaps there were a lot of words, that's why they need to squeeze it in like that. But to be fair, didn't have problem with reading, and I felt like the multiple choice from 4 years ago can be more challenging, and there were more words, but still they squeeze the size a little bit this time. And then next we have the table. Something looks like this. So you will have like this table and different columns, and you will have to fill in certain words in there. Fortunately, part 4 that I have done, it didn't have 3 exercises, only 2. That's what it looks like for my most recent test. But I'm gonna show you a few others mock tests. For example, like a very bizarre part 1 can look like this. So 3 different exercises, and again between 2 sections, and maybe parts that you're quite confused, you don't know if you should move on, or you're still like lingering. You would still be lingering around these questions without noticing that the audio has already moved on to the next one. So that's one of the things that can be challenging and can be very unusual for a lot of students. If it happens twice, 3 times during the time that you do the test, that can be intimidating. So all different. I think it's quite different the way they format each of the part. In general, the types of questions, most of them would remain the same, and they bring back some of the kind of exercises that they haven't used very regularly for the past 4 to 5 years, but they have used in the past, in the more distant past. So all in all, try to practice, and perhaps you can use Cambridge Book 6. It's quite useful, or any Cambridge books that was around that time, so like other number as well. But I think starting from book 3 is a good place to really get used to this new format of the test. All right. So thank you very much for watching my video, and I truly hope from the bottom of my heart that you are doing well, you're all healthy, and of course, I wish you all the best of luck on your upcoming IELTS exam. Okay? So thank you very much for watching my video. Hopefully, I'm gonna see you in my next one. Bye for now.